A soldier, exhausted from war, finally returns home, only to be humiliated on his flight. But what he doesn't know. Someone powerful is watching, and they're about to change everything. Sergeant Logan Kincaid stepped onto the plane, his boots feeling heavier than ever. The past 2 years had been a relentless cycle of missions, sandstorms, and loss. Now, finally, he was going home. He should have felt relief, excitement even, but instead, his chest was tight with something unshakable, an invisible weight that had nothing to do with the duffel bag slung over his shoulder. As he moved through the narrow aisle, passengers barely spared him a glance. Some looked up briefly, then quickly turned away, as if uncomfortable with his presence. He was used to that. Soldiers often returned home to silence, no grand applause, no warm welcomes from strangers. But Logan had learned long ago not to expect gratitude. When he reached the front rows, a flight attendant, a young woman with tired eyes, gave him a small, apologetic smile. "Sergeant Kincaid?" she asked softly. "Yeah, that's me," he answered, shifting his bag on his shoulder. "We upgraded your seat," she said, gesturing toward first class. "Just a small token of appreciation for your service." Logan blinked, caught off guard. He had flown home from deployments before, always crammed into the tight seats of economy, his knees pressed against the seat in front of him. This was new. "Appreciate it," he said, offering a nod before moving forward. The plush leather seats of first class felt almost foreign to him. He found his assigned spot by the window and was about to sit when a voice cut through the low hum of boarding passengers. "Excuse me," a woman's sharp tone made him pause. Logan turned his head. A woman in her mid-40s stood beside him, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit and pearl earrings. She carried herself with the kind of entitlement that came with years of privilege. Her expression was carefully controlled, but her narrowed eyes and slightly upturned nose spoke volumes. "I believe you're mistaken," she said, her voice clipped. Logan furrowed his brows. "Sorry. This seat," she gestured to the one he was about to take, "is not yours." Logan pulled out his boarding pass and double-checked the seat number. "No, ma'am, I believe it is." She scoffed. "You must be mistaken. This is first class." Logan's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone level. "I know." The woman's gaze flickered over his uniform, and for a brief second, there was something in her eyes, disapproval? Contempt? It was hard to tell, but he had seen that look before. "I just find it hard to believe that they'd put someone like you up here," she muttered under her breath, though loud enough for him to hear. Logan exhaled slowly, willing himself to stay calm. He had faced worse than this, far worse. But something about the way she looked at him, as if he were unworthy, made his pulse thrum in irritation. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice even, "I was assigned this seat. If there's an issue, feel free to speak to the flight crew." She pursed her lips, clearly unhappy with his response. But before she could say anything else, another voice interrupted. "I believe the sergeant is exactly where he's supposed to be." The voice was deep, authoritative, and carried an unmistakable air of command. Logan turned to see an older man rising from his seat a few rows back. His silver hair was neatly combed, his sharp eyes locked onto the woman with quiet intensity. He was dressed in a well-fitted suit, but there was something about his posture, the way he carried himself, that felt familiar. A soldier recognizes another soldier. The woman's expression faltered for the first time. "And who are you?" she asked, tilting her chin up. The older man gave a small, knowing smile. "Someone who knows better than to question the worth of those who serve." The cabin had gone quiet. Passengers nearby had paused, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding exchange. The woman shifted uncomfortably, as if realizing that whatever power she thought she had in this moment was slipping away. After a long pause, she let out an exasperated sigh, grabbed her designer handbag, and moved toward another seat without another word. Logan watched her go, then turned back to the older man. "Thanks," he said simply. The man gave a slight nod. "Take your seat, son. You've earned it." Logan sat, the plush seat beneath him feeling strangely undeserved. But as the plane prepared for takeoff, he couldn't shake the feeling that this flight home would be different from all the others. And he had no idea just how right he was. As the plane taxied down the runway, Logan Kincaid stared out the window, trying to focus on the world outside instead of the tension still lingering in the cabin. The woman's words echoed in his head, though he wished they wouldn't. "Someone like you." He had heard it before, felt it before, the silent division between those who served and those who never had to. He didn't expect admiration, didn't need applause. But that quiet disdain, the way she had looked at him as if he didn't belong, stirred something deep inside him. A low voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You handled that well." Logan turned. The older man who had spoken up earlier was watching him with sharp, assessing eyes. He had an air of quiet authority, the kind that came with experience rather than arrogance. Up close, Logan noticed the subtle details, the straight posture, the faint lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent under stress, the kind of stress that left its mark. "You military?" Logan asked, though he was already fairly certain of the answer. The man replied. "A long time ago." Logan gave him a small nod of respect. "Appreciate you stepping in." The older man waved it off like it was nothing. "Not the first time I've seen something like that happen. Won't be the last." He paused, studying Logan for a moment. "Name's William Barrow." Something about the name rang familiar, but Logan couldn't place it. He extended a hand. "Sergeant Logan Kincaid." Barrow shook his hand, his grip firm. "Where from, Kincaid?" "Originally Kentucky. But I've been everywhere these past few years." Barrow nodded knowingly. "Afghanistan?" "Yeah," Logan answered, surprised at how easily he admitted it. "And other places." Barrow didn't press, but there was something in his eyes, an understanding. He had been there, or somewhere just like it. "I was in Vietnam," Barrow finally said. "A lifetime ago, but some things don't change." Logan glanced down at his hands, at the faint scars that would never fully fade. "Yeah," he murmured. "Some things don't." The conversation could have ended there, but Barrow leaned back slightly, watching him carefully. "How long you been back?" Logan hesitated. "Just now, really. This flight." Barrow let out a breath, as if he had expected that answer. "Then you don't know yet." "Know what?" Barrow's gaze was steady. "That coming home is the hardest part." Logan stiffened slightly, an old reflex when someone got too close to the things he didn't want to admit. "I'm fine," he said automatically. Barrow gave a slow, measured nod, like he had heard those words 1,000 times before. "Sure you are." Logan turned back to the window, watching as the plane finally lifted off the ground. "You got family waiting for you?" Barrow asked after a pause. Logan swallowed hard. "Yeah. My wife, Celeste. And my son." Barrow smiled faintly. "That's good. You're lucky." Logan nodded, but the unease in his chest didn't go away. He was lucky. He knew that. But something about the way Barrow said it made it sound like a warning rather than reassurance. Barrow shifted in his seat, glancing around before speaking again. "Let me ask you something, Kincaid." "Yeah." "You ever feel like the hardest part of war wasn't being there, but coming back from it?" Logan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Barrow gave a knowing nod. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Me too." The steady hum of the plane filled the cabin, but Logan Kincaid barely heard it. His fingers drummed against his knee, his gaze fixed on the window, though he wasn't really seeing the clouds outside. The words of the old soldier sitting beside him, William Barrow, lingered in his mind. Coming home is the hardest part. He wanted to dismiss it, to pretend it didn't apply to him. He had spent years waiting for this moment, dreaming of the day he would walk through his front door and hold his family in his arms. And yet, deep down, he knew Barrow was right. Because he didn't feel like he was coming home. He felt like he was leaving something behind, something dark, something heavy, something that had been a part of him for too long. He closed his eyes, but that was a mistake. The moment his eyelids shut, memories crashed into him. The suffocating heat of the desert. The weight of his gear pressing down on already aching shoulders. The distant echo of gunfire, growing closer. The sound of a friend's last breath. A flash of movement. A deafening explosion. And then, silence. Logan's eyes snapped open. His pulse was pounding in his ears, his breath uneven. His hands were clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms. Still there, huh? Barrow's voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the meaning behind his words. Logan exhaled slowly, trying to ground himself. Yeah, he admitted, rubbing a hand over his face. Still there. Barrow didn't pry, didn't offer empty reassurances. He simply nodded, as if Logan had just confirmed something he already knew. You ever talk about it? Barrow asked. Logan scoffed. What's there to talk about? Barrow gave a quiet chuckle, but there was no humor in it. That's what we all say. Until we don't. Logan glanced at him, frowning. You ever talk about yours? Barrow's expression darkened, his gaze drifting somewhere distant. Not for a long time. And when I finally did, it was almost too late. Logan studied the older man, wondering what ghosts haunted him. He had seen veterans before, men who had been back for decades but never truly left the battlefield. He had told himself he would be different. That he would return home and pick up where he left off. But sitting here now, thousands of feet in the air, he wasn't so sure anymore. You think it ever goes away? Logan asked, his voice quieter now. Barrow turned to him, his sharp eyes filled with something Logan couldn't quite name. No, he said. But you learn to live with it. Logan swallowed hard. He didn't know if that was reassuring or terrifying. A soft chime sounded through the cabin, and a flight attendant passed by, offering drinks. Logan waved her off, not trusting his stomach enough for anything but water. Barrow took a sip of his own drink before speaking again. You got a plan for when you land? Yeah, Logan said, though it felt like a lie. Go home. Be with my family. Barrow tilted his head slightly. And then? Logan didn't have an answer. The truth was, he hadn't thought past that moment. He had spent so long focusing on just getting home that he never let himself consider what would come next. Barrow seemed to read his silence. Listen, he said, his tone quieter now, more personal. I run a place for guys like us. Veterans who come back and don't know what to do with themselves. Some just need someone to talk to. Some need help finding work. Others, well, others need more than that. Logan looked at him warily. And which one were you? Barrow's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. All of the above. Logan exhaled, shaking his head. I appreciate it, but I'm fine. Barrow didn't argue, but something about the way he looked at Logan made it clear he didn't believe him. All right, Barrow said. But if that ever changes, look me up. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket and handed it over. Logan hesitated before taking it. The card was simple. William Barrow. Veteran Support Initiative. You don't have to fight this war alone. Logan stared at the last line, his fingers tightening around the card. A war. That's what it felt like, didn't it? Not a battle fought with guns and body armor, but a different kind of fight, one that never really ended. He slid the card into his pocket without a word. The flight continued, and Logan kept his gaze on the window, watching the clouds below. The closer they got to home, the heavier his chest felt. And for the first time since boarding the plane, he wondered, was he really ready to go back? The plane touched down with a jolt, the wheels screeching against the tarmac as Logan Kincaid tightened his grip on the armrests. He had been through rougher landings, ones in places where the threat wasn't just turbulence, but enemy fire. Still, something about this moment unsettled him in a way he wasn't prepared for. He was home. And yet, it didn't feel real. As the plane taxied toward the gate, he glanced out the window, watching the distant figures of ground crew moving with a sense of normalcy that felt almost foreign. It was strange how the world had kept turning while he had been away, how life had continued as if nothing had changed. But he had changed. Feels different, doesn't it? Logan turned to find William Barrow watching him, his expression knowing. The old soldier hadn't spoken much since their conversation earlier, but now, as they prepared to disembark, his words carried a weight Logan couldn't ignore. You step off this plane thinking you're coming home, Barrow continued, but the truth is, you left a part of yourself over there. And no matter how much you want to pick up where you left off, you won't be the same man walking out of this airport. Logan swallowed hard but said nothing. He wasn't ready to admit that Barrow might be right. A chime rang overhead, signaling the beginning of deboarding. Passengers stood, stretching and gathering their belongings, but Logan remained seated for a moment longer, bracing himself. You got someone waiting for you? Barrow asked. Yeah, Logan said, forcing his voice to stay steady. My wife. My son. Barrow nodded. Then go to them. But don't expect everything to be exactly as it was. Logan didn't like the implication. He wanted to believe that coming home meant returning to the life he had left behind, that Celeste and Trevor would be waiting with open arms and everything would feel normal again. But deep down, doubt twisted in his gut. Pushing those thoughts aside, he stood, grabbing his duffel bag before making his way toward the aisle. Barrow didn't say anything else, just gave him a firm nod as Logan stepped past him. Good luck, son. Logan didn't answer. He didn't know if luck had anything to do with it.